Hello, friends. Happy Saturday. It's Saturday. Who knows if it'll be Saturday when I upload this, but happy Saturday. So as I've talked about many, many times in my videos this year, I am looking for ways to make my tarot reading more practical. Meaning that I not move entirely away from the psychology of tarot, because I think that that's interesting. But as I said in my first last always, I think it was my first last always, it was either that or I think it was or the Arwen response to the 15 questions. I talked about this idea of sort of moving away from the psychopoetic, and that sounded very fancy. What I mean is to find ways in which reading tarot can be both a poetic experience, as it has been in my journey, but also where it can very clearly answer the kinds of questions that we want to know in life, about jobs and relationships and such, so that it's not just a tool for looking at higher goals, but also that it can be grounded and earthy, so that I guess it's not just about like the spiritual layer of the major arcana, but also that we can bring it down to the earthy level of the coins or the pentacles, so that and everything in between. Because as I have said, what prompted this was I read an interesting book that had nothing to do with tarot, except in it the author goes through, it's a nonfiction book, the author goes to visit several tarot readers and has a kind of not useful experience. I have had experiences like that as a querent in my time. That's not to say that I haven't had readings that were great, or that I don't know readers that are great, but I can fall victim to a more poetic path than is necessarily useful. So that's just me blabbing about my journey. But this video does actually factor into this technique, or this path that I'm on. As you know, I've been, if you watch my videos ever, you know that I've been working with pip decks, because that has unlocked a certain amount of practicality to me that I wasn't expecting. And I'm continuing with that journey now that March of the Pips is over. And I'm just, in my reading choices right now, I'm looking more at kind of a non-esoteric approach to tarot. So I talked about how Camellia Elias's book was recommended to me, and I really enjoyed that. I'm reading another book right now that's Tarology by Enrique Enriquez. This is a difficult read. It's interesting, and I use that word in all its permutations, but it's not an easy read. So I'm going slowly through it. It can be frustrating as well, and I may do a talk about it. I'm also in the midst of Jean-Michel David's reading the Marseille Tarot, which there's not much to look at. So this is the ebook of a very large, hefty volume that's published through Lulu.com, and you can get it there. It's like a $60 book, so the ebook is only $15. Although now that I'm reading this as an ebook, I kind of wish I had the paper version, but I may now, having spent the money, do I spend the money on the hard copy? I don't know. If anyone has a hard copy and is interested in a trade for it, let me know, because I keep wanting to go in and highlight and write things. Anyway, in this, he reminded me at one point of, and I don't even think I bookmarked it. Maybe I did. Let's see. I don't think I did. Anyway, he talks about the class systems, how each of the suits represents a class, and draws a line between those class systems and modern careers. And I thought that is absolutely something I should think about right now in this point of reading. So, having been inspired by that, but not looking closely at that, I sat down and I did some work and some writing about the suits, and I came up with what is essentially a 3-page, I think it's 3 pages document that I actually have posted on my website, and I'll link to the documents link below. So if you want to read this, you can. As always, it's not necessarily that well proofread. I'm going to talk through some of it now, but it's probably something, if you want to take a closer look at, you can do. So essentially what I've done is I've gone through and thought about the career paths that each of the suits might lead you on, both singularly and in combination with others. So that's this chunk here. And then, and I'll actually read through these with you right now. And then these are like sample combinations of putting the cards together, what kind of career or person they might indicate. And then what I did was I actually just went through the majors and thought about what each of the cards might represent as a career. And then I did some combos with the majors, and then I also did some sample combos with majors and pips. So, so I'm just going to share that with you, and then you can reference it if you want to, if you find it interesting. What I would recommend is, if this technique that I'm about to go through attracts you, is that you use, if you do use mine, that you use it as a jumping off point, and not, it's something that I just whipped up. I put time and effort into it, but it's not. It's based on my own understanding of the suits, my own experience with the suits, my own experience with the numbers, and my learning, And so what I would recommend is kind of taking this as a jumping off point and interpolating your own experiences of the numbers, of the cards, of the suits, and the elements, and how they fit together. So, but that's just my recommendation. You could certainly just take this and run with it in any way you want to. But yeah. So I what I did was I broke the suits up, obviously, by suit, and then I talked about what they might mean in connection with each other. So if I were looking at a spread of cards and I had all wands, and I'm thinking about this in terms of like a spread of 3, but even if I were looking at a larger spread and I had a majority of wands, then what might that indicate in terms of a career or a job? So here's what I have come up with. So in terms of the suit of wands, so these are, I didn't put them in order, but I did sort of I wanted to have visual aids, so I'll spread these out a little bit. This isn't all of them, but this is my beloved Court de Taroki, which I'm madly in love with. I should also say that the handout that I made is based on my own numerological associations, which are also on my website. So you can look at those again. I have a video on how I came up with that list, and if you are interested in learning this method, and I love this method, so I hope this can inspire folks. I wouldn't necessarily, you can take my list and memorize it if you want to, but what I would suggest is actually taking the path that I did, which was doing the initial research and then distilling that research down and then applying my experience to it, or your experience to it in this case, and then distilling it into your own keywords. But I'll try to remember to link to that video too. So anyway, my wands. So when wands are paired with wands, so if there's a spread of 3, say, and it's mostly wands or all wands, or a large majority of wands, I would say that those represent roles that involve fire, light, or electricity. So like a firefighter, fire management, a lighting designer, or an electrician. Now, if you had a spread that had some coins involved in it with the wands, you could say that would be maybe farming, like gardening, forestry. So we get the kind of earthiness with the growthiness of the wands. So farming, forestry, like owning a nursery, like a plant nursery. But then if it were cups, it might be owning a nursery for children, like a daycare center. So childcare in that case. So do you see how this sort of different, it's a little bit like math. And then if we were thinking about swords with fire, with wands, so in that case I might think about it as a job that involves forging. So like welding or metalwork, so if the spread were a combination of swords or of wands and swords, then metalwork, something when fire heats metal. So again, pretty simple in that regard. Now, if I were to move on to cups, and cups with cups, or a spread of mostly cups, we might say that that would be roles that involve fluidity or agility. So I might say music, jobs that involve travel or touring, jobs that require switching modes frequently and prioritizing differently, like project management. If I were to add coins into the mix with the cups, then I might, in that case, talk about how the combination of cups plus coins would involve society. So emotion and earth, emotion and work. So social work, sociology, community organizing, community building. Right? So cups plus swords, I might say, were roles that involved counseling emotions. So we have counseling in air and emotions with water. So clinical social work, therapy, maybe alternative therapies like Reiki or massage therapy. And then when we combine water plus fire, then I would think of steam, right? So in that case, I would think about jobs that involve motors. So motor work, driving, trains, planes, the combination of fire, water plus fire, creating steam to make motors run. If I start with swords as my primary element, so swords with mostly swords, I would say that would involve jobs that are communication, intellect, so things like journalism, education. If we were to add wands to the sword's energy, then in that case I might think of jobs that involve enforcement, so law enforcement or military. If it were swords plus cups, I might say mental health, so clinical psychology, wellness, weight loss. And then finally, swords plus coins might give me roles that involve planning, so financial planning, wealth management, or math in some way. And then finally, starting with cups, with mostly cups in general, there we might get wellness coaching, life coaching, a coach of any kind, like sports, job counseling, unemployment counseling, that sort of thing. If we were to add wands to the mix, fire to earth, in that case, we might say that this would be roles that involve making things by hand, so crafts, arts, baking or cooking even. So the idea of earth plus fire makes me think of cooking. If we were to have coins plus swords, in that case, I would say roles that involve practicality. So parenting, learning, design, life skills training, job prep, SAT prep, empowerment programs, entitlement programs. And then, what I did? I didn't, on my little sheet here, I didn't do coins plus coins. So what I said initially with coins was coins plus cups. So coins plus cups was wellness coaching, life coaching, a coach of any kind, that sort of thing. Coins plus coins would be very much in the financial industry, I would say, banking, for example. So again, this is the kind of thing it's easier to see on the paper, which is why I put it up there for you. But like the idea now is that you kind of combine cards together based on the suits. Excuse me, and I gave you some samples. So let me give you one of my examples here. So the oh, I'm not even looking at the right thing. So let's say the 7 of coins. And then we add the 5 of swords. So let's say we pull a pair of cards, and we're thinking about a job potential for someone. And these 2 cards come up. Then this might be a job that involves counseling people going through mental trauma. So in this case, the 7 of coins, the 7 for me is like internal work. So I'm thinking about the practicality of earth, internal work. So counseling plus mental trauma. 5 is disruption plus the mental of the air. So a counselor who helps people through mental trauma. So, that's just one example. So what I did there was I just spent some time really randomly pulling cards and exploring what they might suggest, and what that might mean in a job situation. Another example I pulled was the Ace of Wands, plus the 2 of Cups. I love these cards so much. They're so beautiful. Where's my 2? Here we are. So the Ace of Wands plus the 2 of Cups. What I did when I did this was I thought this might be a new daycare leader. So the Ace of Wands suggesting to me a new job, newness generally for a job, but also newness meaning childhood, and the 2 of Cups as care and relationships. So new child care, daycare, care. So do you know what I mean? So I just sort of worked through and made my combos that way. I also talked about in my handout how the order could affect things. So one example that I used was the 9 of Swords and then 2 Wands cards. So I chose the 8 of Wands, or I pulled the 8 of Wands. And the 2 of Wands. So in this case, I start with the Swords energy because it was the first card, but I still have 2 Wands cards, so I'm looking at the combination of Swords plus Wands. But Swords was the first, so it's my first energy. So in this example, 9 of Swords plus 8 of Wands plus 2 of Wands, I suggested this might represent a long-serving law enforcement official who's worked hard in that role, but has suddenly been given a new beat or a new assignment at work. So in the 9, I've got exhaustion, heaviness, someone who's been doing something for a long time, like pushing towards retirement. In the 8, I've got hardworking job, and then 2 representing kind of a new connection, a new growth. The combination of Swords plus Wands in my work led me to think about enforcement. So I've got sort of a tired cop who's been working hard and has a new beat. And then now thinking about that from the same combo, but inverting the order. So if I were to start with the same numbers, if I were to start with the 9 of Wands, and then have the 8 of Swords and the 2 of Swords, eight, and then 2. So if I drew this, now the fire energy becomes dominant because it's first, even though I have 2 swords. So in that case, I suggested a an exhausted machinist or a tired machinist pushing through to complete a challenging new job. So in this case, the 9 again is sort of tired from having worked so hard, but the combination of fire plus sword energy plus air gave me early on the idea of metalwork in my thinking. So I have a machinist, a metal worker, who's pushing through to complete a new job. So you can see how the inverting the suits or inverting the numbers changes things. So that's one way to do it too. Again, I mean, there's no rules about this stuff. I decided in these examples that I did that the initial card represented the larger energy. What might be more likely in a reading, though, is that because the sword energy is stronger, I might put that as foremost. So in that case, sword plus fire would be enforcement. But again, I just made this up. You know what I mean? It was me thinking about the element and the numbers and what an element in combination with another element might mean. So, hopefully what I'm saying right now may not make a whole lot of sense. Hopefully when you look at the paper, if you do, then, that'll make more sense for you. But again, there's no rules, which is why I suggest kind of taking what I did and doing your own version of it. The other thing, like I said, that I did too, was I went through the majors and I thought about, what career, what job might the major arcana represent, very simply. And I tried to be simple. I gave a couple options, but I tried not to put too much on it, because like these were the kinds of things where the more you add to something, the more complicated it becomes. So with the Fool right out of the gate, I feel like this is not someone who's employed. You know what I mean? The Fool, I think, is kind of a free spirit and is somebody who likely doesn't have a job. The Magician could be a performer. The Magician could also be a con man. I'm not gonna do all these because they're not in order. The Pope might be a traditional healer, like a doctor or a mainstream religious leader, whereas, for example, the High Priestess might be an alternative healer or the leader of an alternative faith. So there's like a parity there. The Sun, I suggested, might be anyone who works outdoors, or specifically someone who works in childcare, or who works with solar energy. Temperance could be a bartender. It also could be a mediator or an addiction specialist. The World, someone in international business, or anyone who works in travel, or anybody, as Liz Lemon used to say on 30 Rock, trying to have it all. The Star I suggested was a scientist or someone who's a naturalist, like an earth scientist or a water specialist. The Wheel I said might be a gambler or a risk taker. So either a gambler, but also maybe someone who works in or has a career in like alternative sports, for example. So the Chariot would very likely be a driver, or what else to say? A soldier. What are some of the more interesting ones? The Lovers was always an interesting one. I suggest the Lovers to me is about distraction and choice. When I thought about that, I thought about a lawyer or a salesperson, someone whose job it is to convince others to do things. The Hanged Man I thought about as someone whose job it is to see things from a different point of view. So in that case, like an investigator, like a journalist, a spy, or a cop, or a criminal. For Death, I thought about a person whose job it is to end things. So a divorce lawyer, or someone who was in like mergers and acquisitions. But then beyond that, I also thought about someone whose job is death, like a coroner or an undertaker. And then I thought about the skeleton, and I think in that case about someone who works with bones in particular, like an osteotherapist or a bone doctor, so to speak. The Devil was an interesting one. The Devil I suggested might represent a dealer, both like in a casino or a drug dealer, but also a rock star or a sex worker. And how would I know? I think would it depend a lot on the context of the cards around me. You know, if I had, for example, a lot of like wands and cups around the devil, that could have like the fire and emotion of a rock star, you know, whereas with a lot of just emotions, with a lot of just cups, in that case I might say that they might be a dealer in in vices and liquid, you know, in alcohol, say, and drugs. But the pentacles or the coins might make that more practical. So that might be like a card dealer. All fire energy around it. In that case, all passion, all fire might make it a sex worker. You know what I mean? So it's not just the card alone. It's the card in combination with others. So, and then the other thing that I did was then I did combos between the majors. So Death plus the Fool might be someone who lost their job through a merger. The Sun plus the Tower might be a green, because I said the Tower might be a contractor or an electrician. So the Sun plus the Tower might be a builder who specializes in greenhouses. The World plus the Magician, like a world-renowned performer, world-renowned actor. Do you know? So I did that, and then I also did combinations that included the minors and the majors. So, for example, Death plus the Five of Cups might suggest a lawyer or counselor who specializes in helping people end or get out of abusive relationships. And the way that I figured that is we've got the lawyer or counselor is represented by Death, ending represented by Death, the Five of Cups as emotional disruption or conflict. And so in that case, conflict meaning abuse. So Death plus the Five of Cups equals someone who counsels people or helps people get out of abusive relationships. The Hanged Man plus the Two of Wands plus the Seven of Coins. I suggested that might be someone who investigates hidden financial fraud at a new startup. So the Hanged Man is my investigator. The hidden financial fraud came from the Seven of Wands, the Seven of Cups, representing sort of inner, because again, as I said, the seven in my system represents going inside, and coins being financial. So inner finances, something's got to be investigated. So inner financial fraud. And then the Two of Wands represented a new business, a new startup. So someone who investigates financial fraud at a new startup. Do you see? So it's, in a way, it's not unlike the combinations that one makes with Lenormand, although because I know tarot much more, the combinations came much, much quicker. You know, it's worth also mentioning, I didn't talk a lot about the court cards, but, you know, you could use the court cards. So I had a 4-card combo of the Queen of Swords plus the Empress plus the Six of Cups plus the Three of Wands. And I suggested that might be a director who brings artists into companies who might produce their work. So in that case, the director comes from the Queen of Swords, someone who works with young artists and develops young artists as the Empress as a benefactor. Art to me comes from the beauty, the emotional beauty of the Six of Cups, and companies that may produce their work comes from the Three of Wands, as two things coming together to create something new, a new project. So again, I mean, it may sound like algebra when I describe it that way, which is why I do recommend, if you're watching this video and you're like scratching your head, do take a look at my handout, because I tried to explain for the more complicated combos how I got there. But you know, it was actually fun to practice it. And like anything else, you know, you could draw combinations and say, you know, what does the Nine of Wands plus the Devil indicate? Nine of Wands is exhaustion from doing a lot of work. The Devil, again, could be like a rock star performer. So I might have an exhausted musician who's been working really hard to get their latest album done. You know, from the creative exhaustion and the Devil. Where did I get Rockstar from? You know, it was just an association that's in my head from the Devil. You know, I mean, you could easily look at the phallic nature of Wands and the Devil and think this has more to do with sex. But, you know, it's hopefully the cards around it will give context. And it comes, you know, with anything else like practice. I don't have even my system memorized. I really just worked through this and wanted to share it. So, but I think this is cool, and I think it's a step toward this goal that I have of being able to read into tarot things that are more practical than things that are about the higher self. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but about sort of taking it to an earthier level, which is one of my goals for this year. So I hope this is interesting. I hope that it's not totally, I haven't totally confused you. I hope that this handout is interesting and helpful to you. And if you do this, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I know that, there are many books out there that talk about jobs in the tarot and such, and what certain suits and things might represent. But as I've gone along in my tarot career, I've definitely found that sitting down with myself and using my own experience and plugging it into a question like this definitely makes it makes more sense to me, rather than memorizing someone else's ideas. It's I think it's just better to dig in and figure it out for yourself. So hopefully this inspires you to do that. So have a great evening, be well, and I'll talk to you soon.